Keep your head high and get outside of your head, focus on your goals, and try to leave on the best note possible.
Winners never quit, and quitters never win.
Quitters win all the time. Let us show you how on Quit Happens.
Hey everyone, Lynn Marie here. Welcome to the next episode of Quit Happens. I just wanted to send a huge thank you to everybody who has subscribed to the podcast, who has downloaded an episode or two, who has left a review or a comment, or told me in person that something in an episode has spoken to them. I appreciate it all. If you'd like to find out more about strategic quitting besides the Quit Happens podcast, you can find me at Quitting by Design on Facebook and Instagram. Today, we are speaking with Michaela Keilty. She is the CEO of Dynamic Marketing. She's a marketing strategist who supports local businesses here in San Diego and small businesses across the country. Now, Michaela is incredible. I love the interview with her. And after I wrapped initially, we started chatting more. She had more incredible things to say. So there will be this bizarre, awkward portion where I'm like, oh, it's over. And then, oh, no, it's not over, because she had so much more to share. So that's the little weirdness at the end. But trust me, what she says after our first fake ending is brilliant, and you should listen to every second of this podcast. I think what she says particularly speaks to me as a person who is starting out on her own, and I think a lot of you who are in the same situation will really resonate with her story and her wisdom and her vulnerability, and I just can't say enough great things about the chat I have with Michaela. So without further ado, hey Michaela, thanks for coming.
Of course, I'm excited.
All right. I met Michaela virtually when I went to a Creative Morning San Diego gathering or what, event?
Yeah.
What are they? Meeting?
Yes, meeting, event.
Fun-filled morning. And I got up in front of the crowd and said, hey, I've got this podcast. Does anybody have a good quitting story? And Michaela came to me with not only a good quitting story, but one that she had already put in a blog post in near perfection form, as if she had already read Quitting by Design and followed all the steps. And it was genius. And I was like, oh, I cannot wait to have you share your story. At least two of the things she outlined in her blog post were straight out of my upcoming book. And I was like, this woman and I are of the same mind. I love it. So, Michaela, I'm so glad that you're going to share your story with the Quit Happens audience.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to share it.
Okay. Where would you like to start?
Oh my gosh. I guess we can start from the beginning. I got my start at the company that I eventually quit. It was an advertising conglomerate in San Diego, a very large, nationally recognized organization. And I joke about it, but when I first started at this company, I was a college dropout. I assisted the assistant. So I explained to people, I'm like, I was the catfish of the office. I was like the bottom feeder, assisting the assistants. And a sales position opened up, and I was encouraged to apply. And the position entailed hunting and gathering local businesses to get them to advertise on television. And it was a very prestigious sales position. And to me, in my younger, early 20s self, it was just this magical moment of my life where I had this opportunity to get this sales job and move up from being this bottom feeder of the office. And I applied for the job. I had to literally borrow a girlfriend's blazer so that I could apply. I mean, I had no real professional clothes, and I got the sales job, and long story short, it ended up being the perfect job for me. I had no idea what I was doing. I just was very hungry and motivated and wanted to make something of myself. So I dove right in, and I did really, really well. And this was back in 2011, 2012. And I had an amazing year. I was the youngest person on the sales floor, made more money than I knew what to do with. And on paper, I was living large. I mean, I was in my early 20s making six figures. I went from being broke to being able to not only pay my bills, but to save money, and really truly felt like someone. So it was a very pivotal time in my life. But as a lot of people in sales might be able to relate to, the daily stress of being in outside sales, working for a team that didn't have the best leadership really, really started to wear on me. And my happiness just plummeted.
What were some of the first signs? What first spoke to you, maybe from your body, that things weren't going so well?
To be honest with you, I started to develop a lot of anxiety and a lot of tension. My health started to take a turn, and it was very common where I worked, and I'm sure in a lot of other sales capacities, where it's very common to use drugs to stay up. and to abuse substances, alcohol, Xanax, to crash at night. And I had taken Adderall when I was in college before I dropped out of college. And, it's easy to go get a prescription for this stuff. And I was one of those people that did that. I was taking Adderall to stay up and to be able to wake up in the morning and do what I needed to do. And it worked for a while. But that started to impact my anxiety as well. Like it was just this Band-Aid that wasn't healing anything. And to be honest, I would wake up with a pit in my stomach every single morning. And that was the first sign is just, this isn't normal. I shouldn't have to change my physical state like this to be able to perform my job.
That's a really good point. Pit in the stomach is a great description. When you just know something, the pit in the stomach is such a red flag.
Yes.
Something isn't right.
Something's not right. Yeah, exactly.
So what did you do from there?
Oh, what did I do from there? It took me a long time to quit. To say that I had the golden handcuffs on is so true. Making so much money, had great benefits. I had amazing friends at this company. The people were great. And I really didn't want to leave, and I didn't know what I was going to do. Because being not having a bachelor's degree, it's really hard to even get your foot in the door at a lot of other companies. So it took years of just really honing in on what it was I was passionate about. And I realized that I was very passionate about helping the small businesses that I was supporting. So I had to ask myself, what other ways can I support them so that I can keep this thread and not lose that passion? And at the time, television advertising was definitely changing, and people were interested in digital marketing, but small businesses really didn't know what to do. And there were a few products out there, Google AdWords, and social media was barely being monetized from an ads perspective, and small businesses just didn't know what to do. So I just started teaching myself everything that I could about digital marketing outside of my normal job.
Yeah.
And that's how I started the transition, is just self-educating myself so I could build up enough skills to transition into something else.
Very cool. Would you mind sharing some of the process of discovering that digital marketing was what you wanted to do? Because a lot of people, they know they don't like what they're doing, but they're not sure what's next. Can you give some tips into how you came to realize digital marketing was the key?
Yes. I started talking to small businesses about it. When I would go into consultations with my clients, I would ask them about digital marketing and what their experience was, and I would describe some of the opportunities that were available to them, and their eyes would light up. And so it was kind of just diving in feet first and starting to talk about it, starting to open up the conversation, because at the time, I really didn't know if I would be passionate about digital marketing, but I'm a firm believer in just get up and do it. Go take action and try it, because unless you take action on an idea, you don't know what's going to come from that. So
Right.
I think just opening up the conversation and seeing business owners' eyes light up when I told them about the targetability and the trackability and the efficiency of digital marketing, I was like, okay, this is something.
Nice.
Yeah.
I often talk with guests about the fact that there's not a lot of chance in our current educational system unless you get a great internship to do what you said, which is go try the thing to know if you're going to like the thing. That's
Yes.
why a lot of us end up in this quitting situation in the first place, was insufficient amount of trying the thing
Yes.
before all of a sudden we're paid to do it and
Yep.
you're stuck in, like you said, the golden handcuff situation. So where did you go from there? Now you've got digital marketing education under your belt, but you're still working in sales. Now this sounds like you're probably putting in some hours at this point between the two.
Yes. So I started looking up courses in San Diego so that I could just sharpen my skills, and I knew I had the passion and I had more of the confidence behind me that that's something that I could do that's realistic. And I actually started taking these courses at the San Diego State Extension program, and they had a digital marketing course that was 8 weeks. I did that, and I got to meet other agency owners, networking with other digital marketing leaders in the community, and learning firsthand from these people how they started their agencies. And I learned how to write a creative brief and a business plan and marketing strategy. So I did that outside of my work hours. It wasn't very expensive. It was a couple $100. In the grand scheme of things, it was very, very valuable. So thank you, SDSU.
Nice.
And I also took a lot of online courses on Udemy and Lynda and just built those up. Does that answer your question?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay.
Because you stated earlier that just to get up and do sales, it took, some Adderall and then there was like a calming thing afterward. So you went from that to actually working not only sales, but also doing sales and then having to go to these other courses. How did you get the energy for that?
Ooh, I would just say that my level of unhappiness with where I was in my life, it really fueled my desire to turn things around. And it was one of those things where I felt like I could go down a dark path, or I had the opportunity to turn this unhappiness and honestly the struggle of my mental health and to fix it. So how I dealt with that was, to be honest, I just slowly started weaning myself off of the Adderall, the uppers, which is not easy.
Okay.
Started drinking a lot of chamomile tea. I started doing a lot of yoga, and I just stayed focused on my priorities. And it wasn't easy. It took me a couple years to finally have the courage to actually quit and make that full transition. Once I knew the path that I was on, it became easier for me to let go of some of those vices, so I could start focusing on my priorities. And I'm telling you, there's nothing like a little fire under your booty that will push you in the right direction.
Yeah. I really identify with when you said that negative things that you were going through are enough to just push you through what seems like an insane amount of work.
Yeah.
Back when I quit multimedia was easy. It had just, the job had been kind of handed to me, and I decided I wanted to do medicine instead. And I didn't have any prereqs for medical school. And so I had to do an entire, like undergrad's worth of prereqs in a year. And I look back to that and I was like, how did I pull that off? How did I do that much? And I realized it was, like you said, the unhappiness in multimedia. Once you're so unhappy for so long, you'll do a lot of things to get out of it.
You will. Oh, yeah. I felt like I was in a dark cave, and I'm like, I am the only one that's going to crawl. No one's going to save me. I have to crawl out of this dark cave myself, and I'm glad I did. Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm going to reference back to your blog post here. The 3 things that Michaela wrote about in her blog post were these questions that you said you frequently get. One was, how did you know when it was time to leave? Or when did you know it was time to leave? And I think you referenced that when your mental health and your physical health were both kind of nosediving.
Yes.
And the second was, how did you prepare for the final exit? Mm-hmm. So if you could expand on that.
Yes. So I knew I was going to leave the year before I quit. And I quit the very end of December 2015. So January 2015, I knew it was going to be my last year in sales. Knowing that, it inspired me to work as hard as I could, because I knew I was going to completely let go of that income, and I wasn't sure where my next client was going to come from. I laid out my goals on a quarterly basis of what do I need to save so that I can have an oh shit fund. And I believe that wherever you're at in your life and however much money you make, there are changes to your lifestyle that you can make just to save. Like, I stopped going out to happy hours after work. I stopped eating out so much. I didn't shop. I didn't buy any new clothes. Like, I made those choices because I knew in a year's time, my financial situation was going to be so much different. Also, I had a girlfriend who had told me a piece of advice that I still use to this day. And she just says, always give things at least 6 months before you make a drastic decision. And so not only was I planning my exit quarterly and asking myself, am I meeting the financial goals that I need to be able to leave this job? Am I meeting the skill set goals that I need to attain in order to get this job? But 6 months before I left, I started to prospect for my own business and to start cultivating relationships so that by the time I quit, I already had like one little client.
Yes.
That could just keep me afloat. And that happened. And so looking at that 6 months before I left, I cultivated a relationship to where I knew I'd have this tiny retainer that would sustain me. And that's really how I did it. I don't think I ever felt like there was the right time, but it's one of those things, if you don't rip off the Band-Aid, nothing's ever going to happen.
Yeah. How did that end up working out for you? Financial planning and the skills planning that you had laid out. Yeah,
the skills planning was great. The financial planning was interesting, is that I was so afraid of the financial part of things. I was so afraid. There was so much fear behind that. That fear was keeping me in my job, keeping me from quitting. And when I did quit, it was like that fear just dissolved. After about a week of, oh my gosh, I don't have a normal 9 to 5 anymore, waking up like, what do I do? That fear was gone. It was kind of like, you're in the trenches, like keep pushing. And that fear just diminished, which was interesting. And I think I just turned it into motivation to build up my business and my client base. And I didn't have to really tap into that oh shit fund that I discussed previously. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Any other fears that you encountered in the process?
Yes. I had to overcome a significant amount of imposter syndrome, feeling like a fraud. To be honest, I even experienced depression in the first, I would say 3-4 months of quitting my job because my lifestyle changed so drastically. And I'm an extrovert. So going from working in a very fast-paced outside sales environment to working in my home office by myself all day, not having any interaction, I felt like a loser. And I barely had any clients. I barely had anything going on. And I was like, what am I doing? This is weird. This doesn't feel right. I'm lonely. And I had to overcome a lot of imposter syndrome and just transitioning from my former identity into my new identity. And I had a lot of problems even saying like my elevator pitch. I would clam up. People would ask me what I'm doing now, and I would feel weird about it. I didn't feel like a CEO of a company. I didn't feel like the owner of a marketing agency. So it took a lot of getting used to and just rebuilding my confidence.
Oh, I appreciate you sharing that vulnerability.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people think, oh, look where you are now. You know, especially when you put CEO in front of anything, it's like, man, she has made it. She's done the thing. She's successful. But it's not that easy when you go start out on your own. I mean, even what I'm doing now with the quitting business, I spend a ton of time in my house by myself, editing podcasts and whatever else. It is kind of isolating sometimes. Yeah. And I appreciate you sharing that it's not just, oh, the next day everything was your total dream job, dream scenario.
No, quite the opposite. I mean, it was blood, sweat, and tears. Yeah.
And I, by the way, have not at all prompted Michaela to say absolutely everything that I always talk about, but God bless you.
She hasn't.
I haven't. No, this is the first time we've
meant to be.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Because you mentioned imposter syndrome, which my good friends know is one of my greatest nemesis. Yeah. Yes. The fact that you even know that. This is great.
Yeah. I had no idea what it was before I experienced it. And I'm like, what is this that I'm dealing with? This is horrible.
Yeah. Because to go from, I'm a salesperson, you knew that your identity was, I'm a salesperson, and you knew you were good at it. Yeah. And now you have to confidently tell people you're another thing that nobody gave you the title of. You know, like when I graduated medical school, somebody said, okay, you're Dr. Morski. Okay, great. Somebody gave me that title. I didn't have to make it up and just pretend that it's true. But now if I say, okay, I'm a speaker or I'm a author or whatever, like those are things that I have to convince other people of, really. Yeah. But that first takes convincing yourself.
Yes.
And that's a huge chunk of it, like you said.
Yes.
Believing in yourself to be like, no, I am fill in the blank.
Right. Right.
It's true in so many things. We were having a discussion the other day, like what makes somebody a musician? Can you say I'm a musician? What's the difference between somebody who, plays piano at home for a few hours a week and somebody who's a professional musician? Where is the musician cutoff line? And for a lot of those people like ourselves who have high standards, we don't want to say we are a thing unless we know we're great at that thing.
Yes. Yes. Imposter syndrome is just something that I don't think anybody can really prepare for. And it was a term that I feel like I just learned 2 years ago. But when you decide that you want to transition into something else and you give yourself that title, which can feel so weird, you just have to own it, and believing in yourself, it's actually way more challenging to get than to have somebody else convinced that you're something. Oftentimes, I know I'm my hardest critic, and I'm absolutely 100% the hardest on myself. So it took that belief in myself was probably the biggest thing I had to overcome.
Wow. Yes. I wish you could speak to everybody who's in the same transition. That's part of the podcast. Like, you are speaking to hopefully lots of people who are undergoing the transition process, but that's such a key piece. Like, you just have to, as you said multiple times, 1, pick a date and do it. Yeah. Pull off the Band-Aid. 2, believe in yourself. Essentially, fake it till you make it.
Own it.
Yeah. Own it. I am a digital marketing maven, whatever you are.
Yeah.
This is what I am. I am a quitting evangelist.
Yes.
I mean, if nothing else, that's true. I will evangelize quitting until the cows come out.
Yes.
But, so how did it end up transitioning out of kind of the depression period to where you got more clients and started feeling better about things?
Yes. I actually started reading more about imposter syndrome. When I recognized what that was, I just gave myself a break, and realized that if I didn't believe in myself, then who else was going to believe me? And just switching that mindset helped my confidence a lot. And I just started networking a ton, getting out there, practicing my elevator pitch, practicing my spiel, so to speak. It was just getting out there, switching my mindset and networking, believing in myself. And I got busier and busier as the weeks and months went by. I had more clients, more projects, less time to sit there and think in my head, less time to be in my head. And that really helped a lot. You know, I didn't have time to sit there and wallow over my insecurities and my fears and what I was doing. And I just got too busy to care.
No, that's very valid. And I love how it works on both levels. Like, you don't have the time to carry anymore, and you don't have to worry as much anymore because the fact that you're busy means clients are coming in. Yeah, it is working. You are the thing that you are trying to be.
Yeah.
I love it. Okay. Anything that I haven't asked you about your quitting process?
No, I think we covered most of it. I would just say, you know, to anybody out there who's considering leaving their job, the best thing that I did for myself, for my own integrity and just, I guess, my reputation or image, I didn't let how unhappy I was soil my attitude or reputation in my current role. And I tried to leave on the best note, best foot possible, because I saw on your social, you never know when you might want to go back to something.
Absolutely.
You might unquit.
Exactly.
And there were a lot of relationships that I didn't want to burn bridges. And I would just say, keep your head high and get outside of your head, focus on your goals, and try to leave on the best note possible. You might feel like you want to drop kick double doors and leave a company or organization with your middle finger blazing high, but just focus on your goals and leave on a good note.
Genius. I'm so glad you brought up imposter syndrome. I never know what's going to come out of these interviews organically.
Yeah.
And that's something nobody has touched on, but it's such a key piece.
It's huge. I feel like most business owners at one point have experienced it. I know I wasn't alone. And, you know, the more you talk to other people in business, I think the more they can relate to that. So I'm glad that I hit that note too.
Oh, perfectly. The entire podcast is about making sure people don't feel alone, knowing that as somebody else has been in the same position you've been in. And so I truly appreciate everything that you touched on brilliantly.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. This is amazing.
Absolutely. Okay. So Michaela and I finished recording, and then she kept talking, and she had so many more things to say that forget it. We're just going to add a little bit more onto this.
Extra credit.
Yeah. So a few things that she just brought up that I'm going to prompt for you to re-talk about. If you could mention how the older generation thought about your quit.
Yes. They thought I was crazy. I talked to my parents about it, who are they're always supportive, but they never hold back. So they were very proud of me where I was and thought that it was interesting that I would decide to quit my job. I was doing so well, had great benefits, to kind of like jump into the deep end of this pool, starting my own business. And I just don't think they really understood what I was doing. So they kind of had this deer in the headlights kind of a look. But I do remember talking to some other older family members / mentors, and they told me, like, listen, you're making six figures. You're in your early 20s. Like, that's a dream. You need to suck it up and just keep going. Like, suck it up like the rest of us. That's just what you do. Like, you have a great job. You make great money. You might not love what you do, but welcome to the club. Like, you need to keep doing what you're doing. Yeah. And that really didn't sit with me. It just didn't resonate. It didn't feel right. And my parents did always raise me to believe that I could do whatever I wanted to do, whether or not that's the right mindset to have. I mean, I truly did believe I could do whatever I wanted to do. So I'm glad I listened to them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because you shouldn't have to suck it up. Like, this is your life that we're talking about.
Yeah.
40 plus hours a week is the majority of your life.
Yes.
I realize that this comes from the collective consciousness that back in the day when farmers had to provide for their family, they had to go out and toil and they had to suck it up. And the woman or whoever was taking care of the kids had to suck up taking care of kids all day long. And that's just what you needed to survive. But that's just not the case anymore.
Right. And it's this paradigm shift and mindset that if we want to reinvent ourselves, we truly can. Like, we just have to have the right priorities and stay in our own lane and own whatever it is that we're doing and go into it full force. And you truly can become whoever you want to be and retransform yourself over and over again. I don't know if I'm going to be a digital marketer for the rest of my life. I'll probably transform myself multiple times over, but you just can't listen to what everybody else says and leaving my job was a decision I truly had to make on my own. And I did have the support of my spouse, and I had the support of my friends, but even them as well, like they thought I was crazy too. They would look at me with this deer in the headlights look, like, you're going to leave all of this security to just do what you're doing. Okay, good luck. If it's great, it's great. And if you fail, at least you can go back to doing what you're doing before, which is literally what a few people had told me, which felt very backhanded. But
Right.
It was good motivation to make it work.
Absolutely. Okay. That's all I wanted to say back
Okay,
again.
we got it.
So part 2, re-quitting. We're re-quitting this episode. All right. Until next time, happy quitting.